Welcome back, I'm Captain Xavier, and I like all things modular, and I haven't done a really modular build in a while, so I decided to make my end of the year project this year something super modular. And this is actually me completing a project I originally was going to do several years ago, pre-pandemic, and then was never able to finish. And honestly, I'm glad that I wasn't able to finish it then, because I can do a far, far better job now because of advances in technology. There are things that exist now that didn't exist then that will allow me to do this far, far better. And so I'm excited about finally getting around to this project. I've been plotting it, planning it, considering it, and now, hopefully, I'm finally going to do it. And I figured I would do it as a series of videos, a vlog, instead of a big announcement at the end, because I don't actually have a single big blaster that I'm building this year like I have in the past. Instead, it will be the retrofitting and possibly building of a few minor blasters. And in fact, this one was a previous end of the year build, and it's going to get a little bit of retrofit. Not a whole lot, but a few changes will need to be made in order to make all this work. So what am I doing? I am retrofitting all of my fully automatic rival blasters as well as all of my proton packs to make them all interchangeable, or as many of them as interchangeable as possible. Right now I've got 5 proton packs. I've got tiers, the smart guns, the flamethrowers, which is actually 2, and then my travel one that I've been using all of this year at HVZs to incredibly good effect. But they're all unique. I cannot plug the blaster from one into another, or they're not interchangeable. They are all very specific, and that is obviously not very modular, and I want it to be more modular. I also want the blasters to still be able to use their stock feeding mechanism. So if this one took a magazine, it will continue to be able to take a magazine. This one had a hopper. That one might not be able to. We will see. I'll take a look at that one. This one obviously should still be able to use its hopper. It's a Nemesis, or yeah, Nemesis. And that's the goal. And I want to be able to pick and choose which blaster I use with backpack, and so the backpacks will be getting retrofitted, the blasters will be getting retrofitted, and I'll be going all of that. So gonna go briefly over what all needs to be done and some of the basic concepts in this video, and then I'll get to it. Each blaster or pack will get its own video as I go along. So let's take a look at what needs to be done. We'll start by taking a look at the Jupiter and the newest proton pack, because the newest proton pack is the technology that didn't exist when I built my previous ones. My previous proton packs, tiers, the smart guns, and the flamethrower, were all built using a prototype agitator that Out of Darts gave me access to be able to build stuff. But it had some limitations, and that was kind of why they weren't as modular or interchangeable as I would have liked, just because of the way they were built and the way the blasters ended up getting built. But the new proton pack, the production one that you can now get from Out of Darts, is far smarter and far more advanced. The biggest thing is that the battery is in the backpack, and it has current sensing. So you have a cable coming from the backpack that plugs into your blaster as if you were plugging in a battery, and then when you rev the blaster, it automatically turns on the proton pack. You don't have to send signal back to the proton pack to tell it that it needs to turn on. It knows it needs to turn on. And that will make this much, much easier, because it'll make the wiring far simpler, because I simply wire the blasters as if they're supposed to take a LiPo, and then I can just plug the proton pack in, and then it's just a matter of figuring out how to get it to connect the hose. So that makes that so much simpler. If you look at an original Jupiter, this is a slightly modified Jupiter. The grip does come off, so I can do extra stuff with it. But a standard Jupiter has a cable that you plug your LiPo into, and then a socket for a magazine. Well, the proton pack uses that same style of magazine and has a cable. So this plugs in here as if you were plugging in a magazine. Your battery, your backpack plugs into where you would plug in your battery, and now when you pull the rev trigger, the backpack turns on, the blaster revs, you pull the fire trigger, and it fires. So you don't have to make any modifications at all to your Jupiter to be able to feed from a proton pack. That's how the system was designed, and it's absolutely genius that all of all the Jupiters they were selling for years before they released the proton pack are instantly backwards compatible with the proton pack, which is, I absolutely love that. But it doesn't work easily with anything else. This won't plug into anything except a Jupiter. Now, you can unscrew it here. There's 2 bolts that come undone, and then you can connect different options to different blasters. And that is simply not modular enough for me. because I am a huge nerd. And so I want to be able to switch this to other blasters quickly and preferably toollessly. And I also want to be able to have the blasters switch between their stock mechanism and a proton pack, again, easily, quickly, and as toollessly as possible. Some of them, that won't be possible, and we'll go into that. But, like I said, you simply unhook, take out those two nuts, and then you can hook it up to, say, this, which I had previously, if you remember, I made my own magazine that took a proton pack. I modified a Chaos magazine to be able to feed from a proton pack. Well, Out of Darts is far, far superior in pretty much every possible way. Again, it simply sockets in as if you were taking a magazine, so you can take this out, put in a magazine, put in a LiPo, and this will still work normally. Alternatively, you hook this in, you plug the backpack into where you'd plug in your LiPo, and now it's proton pack fed. Again, beautiful design. Now, I originally designed this to use a different proton pack, and so I'm gonna need to make a couple of changes, and some of the things I did previously I don't like, but this one should be fairly simple. The Nemesis. The Nemesis is a fabulous blaster. As you'll notice, I have a massive hopper on here, but let's say I wanted even more. Well, they actually have an attachment specifically for blasters that have big hoppers, and that's this little gizmo, which has the same hose section on this side, but on this side it just has something that looks like you could screw it onto the side of something. And that is what it's designed. You take your hopper, you screw this on the side, you cut a hole so the rounds can go in, and now you can refill your hopper from your proton pack. Now my one question is, how quickly are you draining it compared to how quickly does the proton pack want to fill it? Is that going to cause undue stress on the proton pack? I won't know. I'll be testing that. This is, of course, a Prometheus? Yeah. Prometheus hopper, and it actually does have flat surfaces that this will fit on. The Nemesis hopper, rather annoyingly, doesn't actually have any section on it flat and large enough for this to connect to, because this section actually has two angles, and so it doesn't quite connect there correctly. If you cut down the one rounded side, you might be able to put it here on the top, and you'd still be able to open the door a little bit and feed manually. But not sure what I'm gonna do with that yet. I may go ahead and actually attach it to one of my modified one, or one of the extended hoppers, because I do have a spare, and there is a couple of sections on here that this would actually fit in quite nicely. And I just have to cut a hole and seal it up a little bit. So probably, well, it'd be on this side, but I could put it right there, and then that would work really well. So we'll see how I plan to do that. I'll probably get another one of these. There's a couple of other parts I might get a few extra parts for. We'll see what all I need. Let's take a look at the Perseus. Now the Perseus normally has this tragically kind of small hopper that was removable, and it was weird because it looks like it could have been hold so much more ammunition than what it actually does. And there were issues with it feeding and all of that, but it did come out easily enough that just pull that and it pops out. That was pretty nifty. But they didn't, as far as I know, sell these separately, so that didn't really do you a whole lot of good. But what we have from Out of Darts is this, which simply goes in there, and now it feeds from your proton pack. And this has a swivel on it so that it can feed right or left, ambidextrous. Gotta love that. The one downside is it isn't quick release. This is designed to fit in, so it locks into these grooves here and locks in on the far side, and you cannot simply pull the release and have this pop out. And I understand why, because that would have required a lot more filament, whereas right now it's just this cover in this section, whereas if they made it so it actually locked in and popped out, they would have had to have stuff going all the way down there, and it would have made it much more expensive and a much larger print. And I think they figured most people aren't going to want to go back to this very kind of tragic option, and I understand that. Now, you only have to take out a couple of screws, I think, to be able to open the shell enough to get that in. So it's still easy to reverse. It doesn't take any additional modification to the blaster, so it's completely reversible. It's just not easily reversible, toollessly reversible, which I can live with because, again, tragedy. So that's what we're going to be doing with all of those. I will also be modifying Tier and hopefully repairing and modifying the Smart Gun so that they use the same system. The Smart Gun currently kind of does. Kind of. It uses this connector. Oh, that's the other thing I should probably mention. The way I'm going to make them all more modular is right now you have to undo those two bolts and switch it to the next hose, and that's a little bit more cumbersome, requires tools, and I am lazy. So I, years ago, had a friend, member of the auxiliary, Justin Sprecher, design me this, which is a quick disconnector for the proton pack hose. So you put a proton pack hose into either side of that, and then it sockets in. This side has a section that rotates freely, so the hose won't bind the same way this one does. It can rotate here, so you don't have to worry about your hose getting bound up, and then it simply sockets in, twists to lock. The knurling even lines up. It's gorgeous, brilliant. And I will be adding that to all of the blasters. So the male side that's got the rotating hose will connect to the proton pack hose, and then this side, and I've got a couple of them printed out, will connect to the other side. So this will probably just get connected right there as close as it can, just have a very short section of hose that will connect the two, or maybe I'll have it do a little bit so it's a little bit more flexible and not quite so rigid. We'll see, but that'll connect there so that I can then quick connect the hose in. Same thing on this one. This one, it will probably have a section of hose about that long, so it won't be making it, because that'll just hang down awkwardly. Whereas if I go down to there, then it'll be able to flex, and then the hose would plug in and it would be fine. I also might look into getting more of this elbow. I don't know, but I would hope that the socket that this elbow plugs into is the same as the elbow here, so that you could put another elbow on there, or more importantly, an elbow on this one so it's not sticking out from the side. It has an elbow and then can, whatever. We'll see. That's something I'll be looking into. But very definitely will be using this plug to be able to make all of the blasters have the exact same attachment that doesn't require any tools, easy to connect back and forth. The second thing is power, because remember, power comes from the backpack and feeds into the blaster as if we were just plugging in a LiPo. And most of these have that. So this has been set for LiPo. There's just a cable there. So the only thing that I'm going to have to work out is how do I get power from wherever this hose is connecting, because it's going to connect down here. I need to connect this to here. And there's a couple of ways that I can do that. I do have more than enough extra cable here, because I made this cable extra long and I've just twisted it, so I could untwist this a little bit and give me plenty more cable. And they would almost certainly actually reach. And I just have this cable hanging out, which is kind of ugly. I don't love that, but it would work. I would simply need to make a notch in the battery door so that the cable could come out. Alternatively, and this is what I originally did with this one, is I could have a surface mount jack, which is what this has. This would plug in right there, and then plug in here, and then it would work. That would require additional wiring, and the other problem is I would need to make some kind of a cap that you plug into that when you're not using the proton pack, because if I put a LiPo in here, these become hot. As in, if you touch them, it will electrocute you. So I'm not sure how I want to do that yet. That's something I'll be trying to figure out. I am inclined to, in fact, just have this hanging out and have the cable plug into it. Yeah, it's not as pretty. You've got loose cables. Don't love that. Might come up with something better. We will see. Let me know if you guys have any suggestions for that. But doing it that way, just making it so it plugs into wherever the LiPo originally plugged in, will make this whole process a lot easier. The same thing would happen here. The hose would connect up here, but the power plugs in this section up front. But those actually aren't that far apart. So again, hose coming in here, cable going to there. I would just need to make a notch in this so that you can have the cable sticking out, which would not, actually I wouldn't even, yeah, that one will just, yeah. And then I wouldn't have to make any additional modifications to the blaster itself other than opening it up to put this in. We'll see. Once again, same thing here. This one is actually probably the least obtrusive. Because if this plugs in right here, the battery cable, come on, open up, is right there. So I mean, that one's real simple. I mean, I could actually probably cut a hole in the top of this battery tray just right there and have this cable go into the housing. That would probably be the easiest and probably how I will do it. Just cut a hole there that this will just feed into. That would be by far the simplest. So this one will be real simple. The Nemesis, again, there's a couple of ways that I could do it, but they would all be fairly simple. No, Prometheus. The Prometheus, rather. Names are too similar. Who came up with this scheme? But it all should work out fairly simply. Now, I realize there hasn't been anything terribly exciting in this video, but that's where I stand. It is currently cold and damp and foggy. It actually snowed recently, but the snow's all gone. So I am going to get started on working on retrofitting things, and thank you guys for watching.